Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Serious Strategy Gamer, and we are going to start a new series today playing Command Modern Operations. Command is widely recognized as probably the most realistic and most comprehensive simulator, more than a game actually, of modern naval warfare and air warfare. So I'm very excited to be playing that. The depths of simulation here is actually fantastic. So let's get our hands on this and let's look at one scenario that this has. Because I was looking at the news and I saw that USS Benfold was driven off the Parcel Islands in the South China Sea by the Chinese Navy, and that reminded me that there's a very similar scenario in here that we're going to take a look at today, and we're going to start playing that and see where we're going. So I'm going to explain what this game is about and how it looks. It's unfortunately not the most graphically pleasing, so we're going to go look at the standalone scenarios here, and if I remember correctly, that was a 2015 scenario that I'm sure we're going to find in a moment. It was not Southern... yeah, there. South China Clash. So, let's look at this and let's start the game right afterwards. So, as China rises, it has begun to press a long-standing maritime claims with the hopes of rolling back potential adversaries farther from its shores, opening up Chinese industry to new opportunities and securing the sea lanes of communication to the natural resources its booming industry requires. It is strategy born on the notion that the PLAN, so that's the People Liberation Army Navy, vastly outclasses most nations in the region, and that the United States will never risk war or economic disaster over a small maritime claim. Scarborough Shoal, or the Young Islands, is a small group of islands, reefs and rocks around 123 miles from Submarine Bay, sparsely populated and of marginal value to the fishing industry. Its ownership is contested by the Philippines and the People's Republic of China. We can also add Taiwan in there, but here we go. So China has begun more recently sending Coast Guards vessels and so on. So this is slightly older, 5 years about, which is pretty much exactly the same time, or just over about a year before there was an international ruling that this was not in fact Chinese territory. So we're going to load this scenario. We're going to be playing that, of course, as the United States. There's a very dedicated scenario briefing here. I'm not going to go through all of that. Here's the basic gist of that. The Chinese do have a couple of surface forces here, so that's a couple of ships. They do have a couple of air assets, maybe some submarines, it's likely. Some ground installation that could be worrying to us, and we've got a couple of surface vessels here as well. Not that many actually, an all Berkey class destroyer, so very closely to the ship that was just driven off today from the Parcel Islands. But there we go. And a couple of literal combat ships. Very, very low power ships. I'm not a big fan of these ships. They just don't have the punching power to do anything serious. We've got a couple of other assets. We're not going to go into all of the details here. The gist of this mission is that we're going to enter this scenario here, and we need to protect the assets here in the Philippines. So you can see this is the world. All of the world is simulated at any given moment, but of course this scenario mostly covers smaller areas here. So you've got Vietnam, you've got China up here, of course, you've got the Philippines, you've got Brunei. Now the core of the issue is the real life issue that is unfolding as we speak today is around the Parcel Islands. That's this group of islands over here, which you can just barely sort of make out that this is an elevated terrain here. But the scenario that we're looking at in Command today is about the Spratly Islands, which would be down there, or the Scarborough Reef, which is around here. You can just barely make that out. Now, the way to read this map, and everything else basically, is you've got full circles. These are ships, so that's sort of simulating. At this point, this is the literal combat ship. You've got the lower half of the circle, that's a submarine, so that's below the surface. And then we have the upper part of a circle, so that's an aircraft, that's sort of above the surface if you want. That's an easy notation. If it's friendly, it's a circle. If it's hostile, it becomes triangles or squares. You're going to see that as we go. You can also see these other circles here. We can turn them off for the moment here, but we will need to turn them on gradually over time. And what that represents is basically the engagement ranges. I dislike actually the borders. No, the borders and coastlines is fine. I dislike this place names here. That's a little bit funny. We can do various things here, but what I really want to hammer home here is the depth of simulation here. So, for example, you can see here we've currently selected this UAV. It's a Global Hawk. we can click on that and you can get the database entry. Now there's a general description. That doesn't mean much, but you can see there's a lot of general data, and this is all data that actually flows into the simulation. So you've got a certain physical size, you've got certain parameters here in terms of the order cycle. These are not typically the most important, but you can see there's also takeoff landing capability, so how much airstrip of an airstrip you need, how fast you can climb. There's a lot of information down here in terms of mounts, so what is this actually packing, in terms of the sensors, and you can, for example, see that we've got some radar here with a range of 200 miles, but that range is actually modified because this is an operating E and F band, so it actually tracks the different radar bands in real life. We've also got infrared stuff, we've got various different things here. We don't need to be too concerned, but you can just see the signatures even here in the different radar bands, where it's just remarkable. I really, really like it. It also shows you just how much fuel you need depending on the altitude and depending on the speed. So it's the depths of simulation. I really, really love it. Right, I don't want to go into too much detail about that though. Let's talk about the strategic objective here. Our objective is to safeguard the Philippine vessels. Now, that's going to be these two here with the little A below that. That means it's automated, so it's not in fact under our control. What is under our control is this little combat ship. This one is also a little combat ship. We've got the All-Burger class here, so that is much more comprehensive. If at this point maybe slightly dated destroyer of the United States Navy. There's a lot of description in here. But the most important things that we have is, you can see this guy has a lot of different sensors, radar, various other things. And all of that is going to be important in a moment. You can also see that it has various different launch platforms. You can also see the weapons it's currently sort of actively loading right over here. So for example, there are a couple of Tomahawks. These are long range, very long range missiles actually, so that's lovely to see. Now I wonder, do you have a couple of harpoons? I do not see any harpoons, so you don't have that much in terms of loadout against enemy ships. We've got a couple of planes here. Oh, these are refueling planes. Yeah, we'll need to see about that. Right, without further ado, let's start the game here just for a second, because we want to find out what we've got here in terms of enemy shipping and all of that. And you can see there are a couple of contacts here that are popping up immediately. These are called skunks because we don't know what they are now. At a certain point they are changing to green if they are friendly or neutral, I suppose. Yellow is we don't know much about them yet, so that's just because that's there. Now probably the first thing that we want to do is use this Triton over here, and I do think we're going to turn on its radar, and then we might be looking at a couple of things more and seeing hopefully a couple of things. Yeah, there you go. So we can see there's a lot of shipping in this area. What I suppose what we could do is we could go to, is it F2? I think so, yeah, right. Let's give you lighter speed so you're not burning that much fuel, and we're sending you up a little bit higher in terms of the altitude so that you're getting a good view. While we're doing that, you can see we've at this point identified that most of these ships here are just shipping vessels, or at least other civilian vessels, with one exception here, and that is this guided missile frigate from the People Liberation Army Navy, the Plan. And this guy, what are you carrying? This looks like, just look at the picture here, this looks like it has massive missiles that it is packing. I'm not sure it really does. You don't have that much. No, sorry, this is the right one. Guided weapon target surface ships, that's probably it, right? The Heiji Juntrin. That's certainly a thing. And you can see even the individual missiles here have their huge database entries. But yeah. So we can't control these guys, we can control everyone else. We've also got a submarine. Let's talk a little bit about what we've got and how we're going to use that. So obviously I think we want to run pretty much everyone in this direction here, and I think I would like you guys to run here a little bit faster than that. Now you can see these guys down here, they have a little symbol here, this yellow symbol, and that means they have aircraft loaded. And for the literal combat ships, this means this little guy over here, which is an unmanned aerial vehicle. It's sort of a helicopter, and it's mostly there, honestly, for maritime surveillance. So I think it's going to be a good idea to get some more eyes here in this vicinity. Yes, we've got the Global Hawk, but maybe we want to find out a little bit what's going up over here. That's basically that. It's going to be probably the same for this ship. Yeah, pretty much the same aircraft over there. We've also got a couple of aircraft here on the Allied Berkey itself. That's going to be a couple of Black Hawks or Seahawks, I suppose. Now, these can be different loadouts. This guy here is carrying the Mark 54 torpedo and a couple of sonar buoys. So these things are just dropped into the water and basically trying to find enemy submarines. We've also got one of these guys who's equipped with Hellfire anti-tank missiles. Now, these are very small missiles, only 45 kilos, around about 100 pounds or 90 pounds maybe. Very low range, 5 miles. That's not going to do a lot of damage. But against some of these smaller ships, it might do a little bit for us. Right, we've talked about this UAV. Let's talk about this submarine with a lower circle here. You are the nuclear-powered attack submarine USS Virginia, which that is a Virginia class, evidently. What weapons do you have? You've got quite a couple of Tomahawks, you've got a couple of torpedo decoys, they're not going to be useful, and you've got a Mark 48 torpedo which runs around 20 miles or so. That's not a lot, but it's something. The Tomahawks are missiles. We need to surface or nearly surface to launch these guys. You've got an extremely high range, but you can only target fixed structures. At least for the UGM-109C variant. Now for the E variant, I believe you at least can also target mobile units. So you're sort of an upgraded variant. We'll need to be mindful of that. For now, we're not going to use you at all. I think, yeah, we're going to leave you where you are for now. You're at minus 130 feet. You're just drifting there with 3 knots. It's going to be alright. By the way, this little arrow or this little line here indicates where these guys are currently going. We've got one stratotanker and another stratotanker, so basically just refueling airplanes. They are going to be hugely useful planes that I definitely want to keep around. I guess we're going to move them onto the Spratly Islands here themselves. I don't want to have them all over the place. And then we've got a couple of air bases. So that's these little thingies, symbols here. And we've got Singapore Air Base. You've got 18 aircraft, so that's pretty much the most things that we have. A couple of them are the stratotankers that we talked about. These are just the mobile refueling stations. We've got a couple of Poseidon. These are patrol aircraft, so not necessarily attack aircraft or anything like that. But here's the interesting bit. They are carrying the AGM-84K. So that's the anti-ground missile, and basically that means you guys are anti-ship weapons. So that's very interesting. That's basically, I think, the successor to the Harpoon missile. Could be wrong on that one, but the AGM-84 is the Harpoon missile, isn't it? Well, the K variant is certainly an upgraded variant of that. You can target pretty much everything, in particular surface ships. You are pretty weighty, 600 kilos. Your warhead is pretty large, 360. It's probably not going to kill a large ship in itself. You're not that fast. 570 knots is not a fast missile. And that sometimes can become a problem because that is making it relatively easy to shoot down. And we'll need to talk about modern warfare in a moment. We've also got one of you guys who's equipped with maritime surveillance. So you don't have anything. We are going to rearm you because we can, of course. So let's look at what else we've got. We could arm you with the slammers. We could arm you with sort of either 4 slammers or a mixed layout with some torpedoes, some sonar buoys, and 2 slammers. The issue is, and this is where we really need to talk about that, is in modern warfare, it's not about... Let me put that differently. It's all about the missile salvo. You basically have certain defenses, and we can probably see that at the Allied Berkey class that we've got over here. You've got certain defenses in terms of your weapon systems, which can basically shoot down incoming missiles. So, for example, We might have the 20mm phalanx here. These guys might be targeting guided bombs or missiles that are coming in at a very low range. So you basically have maybe 1 or 2 shots at an incoming missile. You can shoot down maybe 1 or 2 as they're coming in. You also have certain missile systems and so on and so forth. But basically, you have the ability to shoot down, let's say, overall, let's call that 5 missiles that are coming in at a certain speed. Now, if the enemy is launching 4 missiles at you, none of these missiles will make it through. You will be fine. If the enemy is shooting 5 missiles, you'll be still fine. The enemy shoots 6 missiles and suddenly you run into a problem. One of them might be hitting you. 6, 7, 8, so it becomes progressively worse. And that's that very strong non-linear fashion where you really want to make sure to overwhelm the enemy. And that brings us back to this arming decision here, because what we need to decide on is whether we are going to pick the slammer here with the 4 missiles or get a little bit more flexible with more torpedoes, but potentially lower output in terms of overwhelming the enemy with 4 missiles being launched at the same time. I think we're going to go for that because I do see that these guys here do have some missiles as well. You can see it will take some time. It's going to take 6 hours for these guys to be ready. So yeah, it's going to be alright. We'll see. And it's probably going to take a while here for these guys to be fine. Can I actually enable you to do quick turnaround? No, I can't. Right. That being said, there are 2 more aircraft over here which are currently unavailable. They're under long-term maintenance. We're not going to get access to them in this scenario, which, by the way, is going to take about 36 hours or 35 hours, I suppose. And that's going to be alright. We've also got a couple of Super Hornets. So these are our first actual fighter aircraft here. Very good Navy aircraft. I love them. They're good. They're just good. We've got a couple of harms here. Well, that's interesting. So the layout of these guys is, you can basically ignore these guys down here at the sidewinders. They're just low range, 14 miles. That's nice fighting range. We've got the AM-120C. Pretty good missile for the time. Not the best that we can get, but 60 miles, that's at least decent. But the primary loadout that these guys seem to have is the AGM-88C harm. And that is an... What does harm exactly stand for? Homing against radiation? I don't know. Something like that. And basically... Oh, no. High-speed anti-radiation missile. Fair enough. And that basically tries to target enemy radar installations, which is very useful. We've got 4 guys who are armed with that. We've also got a couple of slammers here. We've talked about these guys, so that should be fine. A couple of data pods here. Don't need to be concerned with that. Right, that's the airbase over there. We've got one in Manila. What have you got? Just a single aircraft here. Oh, you're not even under our control, so that's fine. You are Philippine. And then we've got, I'm supposed this is Okinawa, where we've got 3 further aircraft. These guys are also Orions, so more like naval patrol aircraft. You guys are likewise armed with the Harpoon variant, a slightly older variant, and quite a number of torpedoes actually. These torpedoes are mainly anti-submarine warfare. They're exclusively anti-submarine warfare. Really? Yeah, they are. Interesting. So you can't even launch them against other ships. Why are you carrying 8 anti-torpedo? That's excessive, I think. We'll need to be quite careful about enemy submarines, I feel. At least the scenario design did give us a lot. And we've got more Iron Hawks here. That's fine. They can stay where they are for now. We've got 1 in the air. We don't really need more than 1. If it ever gets shot down, we are going to delete it with that. Right, so we've got 2 tankers. I'm going to bring them together over here. And then I guess what we need to do is we just need to see what develops over here. We know that these guys are Chinese, but remember, we are not in a shooting war yet. We just need to see what's going on. We're here to keep an eye on everything. And that's going to be alright. Now, you guys should actually, I guess, try to flank it in there. Try to be a little bit faster. Ramp up your speed. And you can see there is a little speed indication here. So you can see this speed is increasing, which is fine. Every now and then you're going to see a blimp here of enemy radar installations. We know what you are. We don't know what you are, but you know what? This guy's running 25 knots here. and something just launched. I don't know what it is. Oh yeah, it's probably this guy over here, this scout. You know what? Since this guy is acting slightly suspicious, he's running 25 knots. That's pretty fast. So let's try to get there. Let's see what you are doing. I'm going to turn on... I don't think the laser designator here are specifically useful or important. Well, we might use it anyway. What are your sensors anyway? You're not very powerful, but you are using infrared, and I really like that, because that means you're going to be rather useful and not that visible to the enemy, so to say. Right, so you're off to that direction. You're also extremely slow, 82 knots. Yeah, and by the way, this is not the entirety of the visual simulation, but it's coming pretty close. Now, there is a way how we can see 3D views in TAC view over here. It's going to load that up, but frankly, I mean, this is not the most exciting to watch either, so I'm not going to use that excessively here until we're doing something. But you can see this guy is rising. You can also see that of course due to the altitude measure here that we've got, so you can see there's an altitude down there. It's nearly at 1,000 feet above ground on this little guy over here. It's just going to scout ahead and see what we've got in front of us. We can of course click on sort of everything, but yeah, it's not like visually this is not the most exciting. But guys, these depths of simulation here is incredible. I'm gonna actually accelerate timing a little bit because nothing is happening for now. You guys are going up there. Now, we know that there is an enemy submarine threat, and we've seen that one of these aircraft here was equipped with anti-submarine warfare stuff. And I don't want to run into a submarine. So what we could do is we could launch that aircraft, and let's actually do that. And, well, you know what, let's take a second here and basically scout out ahead of us. Now, that would become pretty tedious very quickly. So what we're going to do is we're going to define a mission here. And that is pretty easily done. We're going to define an area which gives you 4 reference points, and within these 4 reference points is an area. Now we can move these guys to be somewhat, let's say, next to our destroyer here, and as we're going slightly out, we're going to do sort of a cone here, so that, you know, we are covering all of this area here in between this, and that's going to be alright. Now the issue is, of course, the destroyer itself is going to move ahead of us. So these reference points currently would just stay where they are, whereas the destroyer, you can slowly see him going to the north. So what we're going to do is we are going to define these as relative to the destroyer with a rotated bearing, which means that as he is turning around, these points will be turning with him, and as he is moving up, they should be moving up likewise. You can just see them moving there. That's fine. So that defines an area for the game. That's not enough. We do need to go to the mission editor, and we will need to create a new mission, which is going to be a mission. Yes, of course. It's going to be the anti-submarine warfare mission for our destroyer, which is a patrol type mission and an anti-submarine warfare patrol. So that's fine. Basically, what that will do is it will try to take various different planes and basically have them do anti-submarine warfare patrols in the area here that is defined by this little green area. So that's fine. We can now go over here, use this Seahawk and set it to the mission anti-submarine warfare. It will now take off from here and basically dip its sonar, distribute various different sonar buoys in this area here, and hopefully find any submarines that might be attacking us. You can see we should probably extend that a little bit further, because this is just 7 miles or so. That would still be pretty dangerous of an area to be in. I'm slightly closing that in because I don't think we need to be too concerned about, like, if a submarine is over here and we are steaming in that direction, it's not that likely to intercept us. Whereas if it's here, so same distance from our path, but it's further away, it has a great chance of intercepting us. So basically that's why we're doing it this way. Now, we don't have to, and they can hear the little sound of that helicopter launching, and here we go, there it is. So it's going into one of these places within that area, just on the edge here. It's going to drop a sonar buoy there. You can see it has a couple, 23 or so, probably going to dip its sonar there. And if it does find anything, oh, you can actually see it drop the first sonar buoy just right as it was launching. It's a passive sonar buoy at pretty deep depth, so that's over 1,000 feet deep. Well, nearly 1,000 feet deep. But yeah. So yeah, you're going to do exactly that. Right, I guess we can accelerate a little bit here until anything happens, really. So what I suppose is that the Chinese and the Filipinos will start a battle over here, and we're sort of gonna see whether that is going to be affecting us. Now, I want to drive you a little bit over here. By the way, you can see the Chinese have built an airbase over here. Now, this is the Parcel Islands, and probably the ones that China, of all of the disputed islands, I think this one is the one that China has the best claim on. This area down here, Hainan, that is part of China. It's admittedly close to Vietnam, but you can sort of argue whether it's closer to one another. This area down here, the Scarborough Reef, that's definitively, to me, looking like it's much closer to the Philippines rather than China. And then you've got this area down here, the Spratly Islands, which, I mean, at this zoom level, you can just barely see China in the corner. But, like, the Philippines, Brunei, Vietnam, arguably closer to that. And then you've got, like, I think China claims all the area up till down here to be for itself. But, yeah, there we go. Right, so we have identified the second ship over here, much larger one it seems. You can see it's with this little tender over here. This is a corvette. Huh, interesting. I would have thought it would be much larger. Various different things there. What have you got in terms of missiles? You've got two twin launchers, so you've got up to 4 missiles of the Sakari, which I'm guessing is the Silkworm extension. Yeah, seems to be the case. How fast are you? Are you actually like super threatening? What? No, that's 100 miles. That's a decent range. 520 knots. It's not that fast. I'm thinking we're going to be able to deal with that. It's a small presence over here for now, but I'm thinking there's going to be more, and there is always the question of submarines. And I'm slightly concerned whether that one helicopter here is going to be enough. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go to Singapore, and I'm actually going to ask one of these guys, one of the Poseidon craft here, to actually also be part of that anti-submarine warfare patrol. He's going to launch from here and be in this vicinity. At least that is what he might do. Now, there is a certain chance that because these guys are basically going to take turns. Currently, I think the mission is set up so that it's going to try to keep 1 out of every 3 aircrafts in this vicinity. Currently, we have attributed 2, so that means that it's only going to be 1, basically, so it's rounding up like that. But whenever that helicopter is going to retire, that patrol aircraft is going to come in and take its place. So I think that's going to be useful at the very least. We can actually automatically launch it because I'm slightly concerned.
Negative radar contact.
Oh, it's actually doing that already. Okay, so that's fine. Yeah, and you can see it's coming in this area here. It's gonna take a while because it basically needs to climb there. It's probably not going to be the fastest aircraft of all times. Yeah, you can see it's 250 knots. That's probably going to increase onto 450 or so, but it's gonna take a while. How far is this away? 1,000 miles, so it's going to take 2 hours or so for this guy to arrive, which is fine. Right, so how are we looking here? Filipinos and Chinese are closing in with one another, and I'm thinking that there is going to be a shooting war in just a moment. Now, the question is whether we want to already launch some of our aircraft as we're seeing this standoff develop. We could launch it. The question is, just to keep an aircraft airborne and operating very far away is typically a bit of a challenge. So, nevertheless, I think we probably want to do that. So, let's take 2 of these Super Hornets, and do we want to take the Slammers or the Harms? I think we can use 2 of these guys. We're going to launch them as a group of aircraft. And you can basically see it takes about 2 minutes for these guys to scramble. We've got these 2 stratotankers here. I'm going to actually define you guys as a group. You can see it's sort of a double thing now. And you're going to be airborne over the Spratlys there. You can loiter there. You don't need to be too fast there. I think it's going to be fine. These guys do have a lot of fuel, obviously, for very apparent reasons. But yeah. And as we are seeing this shootout begin here, at least that's what I'm suspecting that we're going to see, we probably need to turn on the surface weapons range. You can see there is a certain range from this guy, and they're going to enter each other range in just a second here. And we probably also want to do the surface sensors so that we know whether we are seeing enemies or not. So this is the area where we would be potentially seeing them. And you can see, okay, this guy, you can see these guys are now starting to shoot at each other. And we're going to quickly turn on the 3D view. And then I think for the actual action, I'm going to have to wait until next episode. So that being said, come on. Come on. Here we go. Hopefully you can see that. But yeah, there we go. Some shots being traded. I don't think you can terribly well see the shots in TAC. You can see the sort of the explosions. And there we go. This is our message here. So, top secret, compact FTL has received SIG-INT indicating that the plan intends to commence hostilities against Philippine naval units. This is a major escalation by the Chinese and it must be met with appropriate countermeasures. Proceed with available assets directly to the vicinity of this island and ensure the safety of the Filipino vessels. You're authorized to open fire on anything that poses a threat. You can see these guys are now exchanging fire. There's going to be a lot of events that are associated with that. For example, you can see the 76mm burst here has impacted. So actually the Filipinos did draw first blood here, but that is not going to be the case for long because these guys here are just sort of very small patrol boats. They're not going to be able to survive that for too long. It is we that need to come to the rescue. That being said, I think now is a good place to put in a cut. So, thank you very much for watching. Do let me know what you think of this game. I know it's not the most pretty, but it's so deep and I really, really like it. And there's not that much else in terms of modern simulation. By the way, do notice that there's a plane over here. Maritime patrol aircraft of the Chinese. I'm thinking there's going to be more than that. But this one we know of because it's actively emitting radar, and therefore we know about it. That being said, thank you very much for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Do leave a like and everything, and I hope to see you around next time. Bye bye.